The problem is when we're led by everybody else, we get to the end of the day, we feel depleted, and we're not actually understanding what we actually accomplished in the day, how are we feeling, and instead it just keeps snowballing from day to day to day, which affects our sleep, which affects our health, all of it.
Who doesn't want to be a great leader? A leader who's calm under pressure, insightful, respected, well-liked. But what does it take to become a great leader? Hey, I'm Boo, and welcome to my podcast. The Few Leadership Podcast defines great leadership and what great leadership looks like. And I've found some of the world's best leaders or experts in the field of leadership to help you accelerate your leadership journey so you can be an ace at the game of leadership. If you're ready to rethink everything you know about leadership, if you're excited about accelerating your leadership journey, let's strap in and ignite your leadership potential. Welcome back to another episode of the Few Leadership Podcast, the speaker series. Very excited. I think I say that at the start of every single podcast. I need to come up with a new word, but that's what it is. It's authentic. I'm excited. And I kind of feel like this year we've forgotten some things about well-being, and we've forgotten a little bit about duty of care, and we've forgotten a little bit about being human and looking after the humans in the business as the monster that is AI dehumanizes workplace as well as society. So we're going to get back into human connection and how important it is to be human in your leadership game. And I think we've got a world-leading expert to take us on this journey today. Her name's Amy Vedder. Amy, thank you so much for joining me on The Few.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. What's going on? What's going on in the world? I feel like well-being so 2024. What's going on in the world of leaders that we seem to have forgotten about this?
Yeah, there's so much disruption happening all at the same time, whether it's offshoring, AI trends, technology, and just the world in general. I think it's easy to get distracted, but that's always the time. Coming back to self really is helpful in those times. And, this is why this year I've really kind of gone even harder on this topic, because it is proven that when leaders take better care of themselves, the business actually does better as well, because they are the example for everyone else in the organization. And that's how people follow. You can have the employee well-being programs, you can be talking about human connection, but if you don't see your leaders doing it, it just doesn't happen.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because if you look at the generations as we've come through business, I'm very fortunate to have a 99-year-old grandmother who was brought up during World War II and traveled the world, very successful businesswoman whose whole philosophy in life is just get on with it. And when she had her very first accident at the age of 98 and had to go to hospital in an ambulance, the ambulance driver said, "Oh, when's the last time you went to hospital?" She's like, "This is the first time." 98 years, never been to hospital.
Wow.
Yeah. How good's that? Maybe just get on with it.
Amazing.
Yeah. She's the same lady. I'm just, excuse me while I indulge. I love my grandma. She's my hero.
Yeah.
She's such an amazing woman that at the age of 98, she was walking back to her car and a young kid was trying to steal her car. And rather than run away, she walked up to this young lad and said to him straight away, "You're ruining your life. What are you doing?" And had a coffee with this kid for 30 minutes. And
I love it.
I talked him back to the righteous path. How many people in life would do that these days? Like actually intervene, So anyway, I digress.
Well, but I would pause on that, because it isn't just about intervening. It's taking the time. And that's what people don't do, is take the time to be present with someone, to show that they matter, to have the conversation. And everyone's rushing from thing to thing to thing or getting distracted. And what your grandma actually showed was leadership ability to take that moment, and what a huge impact we have when we do get present.
Yeah, I think we've got like this Zen connection, because that was my next question. My next question was time, right? Because obviously when we talk about, looking after ourselves and, something simple like go to yoga, spend some time meditating, the instant excuse is I don't have time, right? That's the that's the key.
I'm too busy game. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, well, what's your screen time? What's your screen time say? How many hours is on that? Where's the time gone?
Well, it's really about creating boundaries. I think it's easy to get wrapped up in the day and meeting after meeting snowballs, and then we have other demands in our lives, and we just get driven by that instead of just slowing down and realizing that we exist, that we need to connect with who we are in the day, to just notice what our energy's like, how we're showing up intentionally, and also really prioritizing our day of what are the most important things that we need to do in the day. The problem is when we're led by everybody else, we get to the end of the day, we feel depleted, and we're not actually understanding what we actually accomplished in the day, how are we feeling? And instead, it just keeps snowballing from day to day to day, which affects our sleep, which affects our health, all of it. So it's really important that we're intentional about our day. And intentionality can be as simple as making sure that you have 5 minutes between meetings or 10 minutes between meetings, that you're not just rolling from meeting to meeting, so that you do have time to get still, take a walk, listen to music, get your energy the way that you want before you go into your next experience or before you're about to even do your own work, so that you're the most productive as possible and get the most out of each experience. But I think too often what I see is that we might block time on our calendar to do something for ourselves, but if someone asks for that time, we give it away instead of prioritizing ourselves, our well-being, why we are doing those things so that we show up better for the people around us.
There must be something deeply human, though, in that we know all these things are good for us, right? We know taking time for ourselves is good, but we don't do it. There must be something deeply human that just triggers in our brain where we go, oh, you know what? I just need to be busy because that feels right. And when I'm not
Yes.
busy, that feels wrong.
Well, it usually draws back to a behavior is usually 3 steps back to a belief system that we have about ourselves.
I love this stuff. Spot on. Yeah.
So, in that example that you're saying, am I a people pleaser? Do I need to feel busy so that I feel important? All of those things. Like, we've got to really drive back and then where did that come from? And why do I feel that way? And the problem is, I'll use this example that, I'm a CPA, but I'm also a yogi. I've owned multiple yoga studios throughout my career. And one thing that I found was people were more afraid of like looking in a yoga studio, trying to figure out what it's like to go to yoga than go to CrossFit. Because in CrossFit, we keep our brain busy and it takes a lot of courage to slow down and just assess our behaviors and where do they come from and whether they actually align to who we are today or not. And that's hard work. And it's whether we're ready to do those things and actually be, brutally honest with ourselves of the actions we take versus kind of blaming the outside world of the situations we're in.
Yeah. Well, the outside world is always doing stuff. It's always taking me away. It's I'm in service to the world around me. There's nothing I can do, right? Which is again kind of a bit of a mindset. 15 years I've tried to do yoga and meditate. I go to yoga for exercise, right? I go to yoga because I'm old.
Yeah.
I go to yoga because my bones are getting old and my ligaments are. And if I
Whatever
don't go to
gets you
yoga,
there.
I'm not going to move, right? I'm going to sit on my ass. Uh, but in yoga, they're telling me to empty my mind, to find a thought, acknowledge the thought, put it in a bubble, push it away, create a space, be internal, enjoy the burn, hate the burn. But anyway, and I've got intentionality about it, but I just find it just so hard. I just go and turn it back into exercise. What am I doing wrong?
Well, there's nothing wrong. And I think that's part of the misnomer about whether it's meditation or yoga or Tai Chi, whatever it is. It's really training your mind to be present, but our minds are thinking all of the time. We are always in process. There's a whole nother conversation going while we're talking, like while we're having this conversation, we probably have other conversations going in our head of, you know, future things that might be happening, past things that this is reminding you of. And so it's very hard to control our mind. And really, what it's about, yoga is the union. It is being intentional and aligned with what is going on in your body. So it's not about completely having no thought. What it is about, the way I look at it is like research of yourself. It's observation. And so when you get still, when you get silent, or you're trying to be intentional about your thoughts and your thoughts shift, it's that observation and awareness of what that thought is. What is it actually informing you about? So it's not judgment of the thought or mad at ourselves that we have the thought. It's more like, that's interesting that that's in there, because if I hadn't slowed down, I wouldn't have even realized I was feeling that way, even if it's exhaustion or frustration or whatever it is, stress over things at work. So what they were actually teaching you there is a noting technique of like, okay, I'm really stressed at work. So let me label that. It's stress. Okay. If I label it as stress and I breathe it in and I breathe it out, can I allow it to release and just come back to my intention of where I wanted to be during this practice? It is called a practice for that reason, so that when we come out of it, it's like, okay, all that's sitting in me. What do I need to do to bring myself back to balance or equilibrium so that I am showing up with intention with the people around me or what I want to be doing? And when I start feeling that feeling rising up, what do I need to do to shift that? And so it's just this research of ourselves rather than putting this pressure that there's a perfect yoga practice and there's a perfect meditation. There isn't. We're human.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make. I mean, it's so easy to become binary. I'm doing it or not doing it. And if I'm in the between, I give up. I've got to find something that feels like I'm doing something, whether it's the right thing or not. Tell me a bit about your journey as well, because I mean, CPA, I mean, that's about as businessy, as numbery, as un-yogi as a human can be. And then, your connection with finding this space and being present. What came first, the yogic philosophy that morphed into CPA, or a CPA that morphed into the kind of well-being space?
So I will say that I started as a CPA that moved into this space. I will say that it was probably there all the time. And this is where our belief systems is that I was trying to be what everybody else wanted me to be and make sure that everybody else was happy. And so I wasn't taking that time to really uncover who I was. So that journey that I went through was basically an uncovering of, if I allow my own belief systems to come up, or the way of life, or how I want to go about life, it showed up. Right. And so I, drove myself as a CPA, became a CPA firm partner at one point. And I've also been in many corporate executive roles for as a subject matter expert, CPA in technology world. And during that time in my early 30s, I started yoga, and it was a mistake. It wasn't even intentional. It was because I had my second child and I got sick from the pregnancy. And the only thing I was allowed to do was go to yoga. And for me, I'm like, are you kidding me? That's not going to lose the baby weight and everything else.
I'm going to hit the gym.
So, yeah. So I started that process, and I think because I didn't have any other option at the time, I was someone that always worked out, still am. It is one of those things that I know feeds me and helps my energy in the day. So I really started to try to understand it. And one of the things I realized when I would finish a yoga practice is I'd feel so good. And I'd also not want to go back to work, because in the CPA world, a lot of times you're working till 8, 10, 11 at night, especially during busy season. And it would get me to a place where I'm like, why do I feel this way? And I'm a learner. And so went through the process of becoming a yoga teacher, not really to become one, even though I did. It was really to learn more and get deeper into understanding that philosophy. And as I started seeing, and it's small changes, right? It's just little things you're doing that's shifting you. It's not big things right away. But as I started incorporating more and more things in my life, I started realizing this philosophy really, this is ancient wisdom that is coming through. It's not religious. These are human practices, because the human condition has always felt this way. And people have been trying to figure out, how do we help ourselves to feel better. And so in those practices, that's where I started developing the B3 method, business balance and bliss, because I started believing I can merge this with our modern cultures that we have in business. But when we start incorporating this, it can really help the well-being not only of the company from the business side, but also the team that works there. And over the years, I've been able to prove that. And it's just exciting to kind of show those results now that this is not a soft topic. This is a real business topic that is going to help not only the business, but the people that work there.
If you're enjoying the show, I'd just like to ask of you a little favor. We're on a mission here to ignite the world's leadership potential. We need to reach out to as many leaders as we possibly can. So if you're enjoying the show, I just ask you to leave a review, to subscribe, to help introduce this podcast to other leaders to join you on your journey to flawless leadership. We're going to head back to the episode now. I hope you've enjoyed what you've learned today. Please remember, let's ignite a movement of flawless leaders. Subscribe, leave a review. Let's get back to the show. But it must be hard to let go of that belief system because, I feel like people pleasers, high performers, people that get promoted, they become partners. And I was certainly like this before I met someone that helped me change my view of the world, is all of that hard work, all of the not well-being stuff is actually the thing that got you there. So if you let go of that, you're not going to be a partner. You're not going to have a nice car. You're not going to have a big house. You're not going to ride the material ladder to its pinnacle. So we have a segment called sliding doors, right? So within that journey, what do you think you could have done earlier?
I saw that movie.
What's that?
I saw that movie. That was a good movie.
Yeah. But before you kind of were forced into it, let's say, because there's nothing better in life to learn a lesson, to be forced to learn it. What was something that you could have done earlier to help kind of you connect with this earlier in life? Like, was there any triggers? Was there something, and this is more for a leader who's on that kind of, the more I do, the harder I work, the better I go. And if I stop doing this, then I'm going to be a failure. What are some of the triggers or something that you're sensing within yourself where you should listen and go and get on a yoga mat for the first time?
Yeah. It's that sense of awareness of actually hearing the people around you. And it doesn't mean it has to be yoga, right? Is the thing that you do, but it is actually starting to notice the pattern that's happening in your life and being open to that, of like not thinking it's everybody else, that you're actually hearing the things that people are saying. And one of the things that I've gone back to over time, but as I was moving through my career, I remember one evaluation that I had with a manager, and I'd gotten the promotion that I wanted. They were giving me probably 98% great feedback, but there was like some constructive criticism on there. And that's what I focused on.
What was the constructive criticism?
I can't even remember anymore, but I just remember the feeling of what it was. And because I felt like then they're disappointed in me. And I had to figure out, like, where does that come from? Right. And my manager actually, because I was kind of like getting defensive about the feedback that had come to me. And my manager kind of paused and said to me, Amy, you're getting the promotion. This is a great evaluation. Like, what would make you happy? And it kind of paused me at that moment when she said that to me, because I was like, I don't know. I couldn't even answer. So I thought I was driving for this next promotion or this next thing, but I get the promotion and was like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Like, it was constant, like, insatiable, where I could not fill it. And it really is one of those things where when you notice that happening, those are the times to pause instead of thinking like, oh, well, that feedback wasn't right. But you start hearing similar feedback, like whether it's from your family and friends or whether it's from people at work. And when people say, you work too many hours or things like that, you can push it off. And especially in the accounting profession, a lot of times the answer to that is, well, that's just the profession. No, it's not. It's actually a choice of how you're going to move through priorities, whether you're going to delegate, And once you start moving into that, it's like, oh, well, if I delegate the work, what's it going to mean for my job? Or are people going to think I'm smart enough? And are they going to do it right if I don't do it? And all of those things, instead of like really stepping back as like, why am I getting triggered by these things, or why am I holding on? And I think those are the things that I wish, maybe I had paid attention to earlier. And I don't think it would have affected me getting the next role. It just would have allowed me to prioritize what was important for my health, my needs, and make sure that I'm still on the career trajectory that I want to be. So I don't feel like you have to barrel your way through. And I do think the world has changed a lot where those types of leaders aren't as accepted anymore. There was a time when that was what it was. You were supposed to be tough. I remember being told in my first leadership job that never get close to the people under you because you might have to fire them one day. And you don't really, and that was always in my head, but it always didn't really align to the way that I wanted to lead or the way that I wanted to work with people. And so, we have to understand that these shifts happen, and what's going to be valued is employee well-being. And if you're not engaging employees, if your turnover rates are really high, it's very hard to progress as a business and be profitable.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, it's almost like when you stop working so hard, you get even better. And I think I certainly had that surprise, mid-30s when I met a spiritual healer, and the same, being a high performer was the same question. It's like, what are you doing all of this for? Like, when do you get happy? And I think that's such a powerful question for somebody to ask you. Like, it's such a confronting question as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like, and you're not the first, guest on the podcast that has said exactly the same thing, which is like, when does it end? Like, when does it get to good?
Yeah.
It's super powerful. So what does make you happy then?
Well, I mean, so it definitely took a journey. And one of the things that I realized over time, because I had had a very hard way to go, when I was younger and just trying to make ends meet. And that was part of the push to never be in that position again. And I remember the day that it kind of flipped in my head was I was actually taking my older son to his orientation at college, and it ended up being the same college that I had gone to, or university. But when I went by myself. I was confused. I didn't, I just kept telling myself, I'm finally gonna, do what I set out to do in life. And there was a point where I had walked up this hill to the place where the orientation was happening. And there's the stadium where the football is played. And I looked over that stadium and I was like, I'm going to be successful one day. Like, it was just this moment, that I was going to, get over this hump. Well, I took my son there and we're walking up to orientation. It's the same university. And I totally forgot about that experience. And all of a sudden I saw him and the stadium, and we were in that same spot. And I was like, just pause here. And I took a picture of him right there. And I was like, I think I finally can answer that question of what would make me happy. It was about like, he's actually going after his dreams right now. And I'm here next to him. And I was able to help him get there and support. And I could have never known that when I was 20. That was really what was going to fulfill me the most. It wasn't about a title. It was about like being able to serve my family so that they're able to achieve their dreams. And that was just such a big eye-opening thing for me. And along the way too, I've gotten back to playing music. So I play bass guitar. And then the last couple of years, I've started to play violin again, which I even brought it out on stage in my last keynote. So that was kind of fun. I do yoga, which makes me happy as well. I mean, exercising is a big thing, but exercise isn't going to be the thing for everybody. It's the thing that gives me release. But I make sure I block my calendar for those things because I know I show up better as a leader when I'm doing them.
And you've taken some of the guesswork out of this with the 3 Bs, and you've obviously put a lot of thought behind this. You've published some amazing books. What was it that had you kind of come around to where you are now in terms of helping others?
It's interesting because I've always been a speaker and somehow in my life, like I was in, help with, I was like a TA in college, I was an adjunct professor. And then I started going down this path of speaking in the corporate world prior to me starting my own business and really seeing the power of the lights go on for other people and making an impact. And I think that same thing of like, what would make me happy when I see that something that I worked on actually made a shift in somebody, or they message me and they say, this really was important to me and helped me get to X, like that fills me up. And so I think the more and more that happened, I realized like, I want to bring this together and find different ways to do it. And I have the books. I also have a podcast and I'm a keynote speaker and we do courses and retreats. So we find the mode that someone wants to meet us at. And sometimes at a keynote, it's a surprise, right? But they didn't know they needed to hear that today. And when that happens, having those private conversations has allowed me to answer what makes me happy.
And I would assume if you're doing it in a peer group and you're doing it within an organization, then that now, and they have awareness that now they've got the opportunity to help each other be accountable to that, right? And
Yes.
the easiest way to shift a belief is if the people around you shift their belief as well. It's much easier to be in an environment that people around you believe the same things. So I can see the power in that. Amy, if there's someone in this podcast, right, and they're kind of like, I feel like I'm one of those folks that just dials in and just absolutely crushes it. And I love having my calendar stacked. I love working from 7 till 7. I feel like if I let go of that, I'm afraid to let go of it. I'm afraid that my identity is going to shift. I'm afraid that I'm just not going to be successful if I'm doing stuff that doesn't deliver on my targets. What is one thing that you would give a high performing leader, one piece of advice, one activity that they could do immediately off the back of this podcast that kind of brings awareness to the need to invest in yourself and to find the time to be present and to journey a little bit around self-discovery? What is the one thing that you would get them to do?
Well, so I'm going to answer that in two ways. One thing I would say, and I say this to clients that come to me as well for consulting or, like you said, group coaching for their organization or transformation work. If they're not ready to do it, it's not the right time. You cannot force this. Like it has to be that someone is actually coming and saying, I work 7 to 7. I can see the effect that it's having on the employees. I may like to do it, but because I'm doing it, people are starting to leave because they think that's the expectation of the way to work there. Now we have something to start with. Or I'm like, I can't keep this up anymore. I don't have enough time for my kids. I don't have enough time for my personal life or my, things I want to do outside of work. Then we've got an opening to the conversation. And the first thing really is, can you prioritize your day? So when I'm working that many hours, a lot of times I'm just like picking what's next. Instead of just starting your day and saying, what are the 2 or 3 things that I have to get done today? And can I just time block for that and know I can leave at 6 o'clock instead of 7 o'clock? And then how I'm going to shift the other things to another day. So like I can start with little things that aren't yoga, that aren't breath work, aren't, all the other things, because those will come. But if I can at least get myself to realize that I'm keeping myself busy with a lot of other stuff that's taking away from my life, it's usually a great place to start.
That's awesome. And I love how you framed it, which is you can't force it. Like it's not something that, well, unless you injure yourself, obviously, and the only thing you can do is yoga. Maybe there's a lesson in that as well. Amy, hey, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Eternally grateful for you taking time out of your busy day to be present with the leaders on here. And if you're looking for Amy, just scroll down. You'll see all of Amy's contact details, outreach, books in the show notes. And if you haven't got time because you're driving in a car, just go to amyvetter.com. It's Amy with a Y, VETTER.com, to try and find that little bit of balance in your life. And as you say, Amy, who doesn't want to live a life of bliss? So thanks again for coming on the Few Leadership Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just think you're absolutely darling, and I love what you're doing for the world. So thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.